I never believed a fake relationship could turn real. But that's exactly what happened to me. It all began as a joke. A harmless act to save face in front of friends. He wasn't supposed to matter. Not to my heart. Yet every smile he gave me, every word he whispered, started to feel too real. And when the line between pretending and truth finally blurred, my whole world changed forever. When I first agreed to fake date him, I thought it would be easy, a simple arrangement. No emotions. No strings attached. Just a way to avoid the endless questions from family and friends. The pressure of being single was exhausting. So when he suggested we pretend, I laughed. And I said yes. At first, it was nothing more than a performance. We practiced holding hands in public. We rehearsed smiles, stolen glances. We even set rules. Like no kissing unless necessary. And never, ever, fall in love. In the beginning, it almost felt like a game. We went to family dinners together. My parents adored him. They said he was polite, respectful, and the kind of man I deserved. I knew it was fake. But still, hearing those words warmed something inside me. We went to my cousin's wedding. Everyone whispered how lucky I was. And when we danced together, his hand resting lightly on my back, I forgot for a moment that it was all pretend. I let myself enjoy the closeness, the way his eyes softened when they met mine. But late at night, when I lay in bed, I reminded myself of the truth. This wasn't real. He wasn't mine. And I wasn't his. Yet slowly, little cracks started to form in our carefully drawn lines. The way he looked at me sometimes felt different, not like an actor playing a role, but like a man seeing me for who I really was. And the way my heart raced when he touched my hand scared me. One evening, we went out to dinner. Just the two of us. No family. No friends. No audience to convince. It was supposed to be practice. A rehearsal for an upcoming event. But when he leaned across the table and made me laugh so hard I almost cried, I forgot to pretend. I forgot the rules. And when he brushed a strand of hair from my face, felt a spark. Real. Undeniable. And dangerous. I told myself it was nothing. Just a slip. Just the wine making me soft. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. Something I couldn't take back. And that night, as I closed my eyes, I couldn't stop hearing his voice. The way he said my name. So gentle. So real. It lingered, haunting me. Reminding me that maybe, just maybe, our fake story was becoming something else. The more time we spent together, the harder it became to separate truth from lies. Our story was meant to fool others. But sometimes, I wondered if we were only fooling ourselves. Family gatherings. He blended in so perfectly. My mother always saved him the biggest portion of food. My father invited him to talk about work, cars, life, and my little niece. She clung to him as if he were already part of the family. Everyone believed the illusion, and I played along, smiling, nodding, pretending to be in love. But inside, I could feel my heart shifting. Pretend love was starting to feel too close to real. One afternoon, we were shopping together. It was supposed to be casual, just to make sure our story looked convincing. But when he held my hand in the middle of the store, I realized he didn't let go even after we left. I noticed the warmth of his palm, the security in his grip, and I didn't want it to end. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept asking myself, why does this feel so different? Why does every small gesture feel bigger than it should? And why does every glance stay with me longer than it should? I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was imagining things. But then came the moment that shook me. We were at my best friend's birthday party. Everyone was laughing, dancing, and taking pictures. Someone shouted that we looked perfect together. And before I could respond, he pulled me close. He kissed me, softly, yet deeply enough that I forgot the crowd around us. It wasn't planned. It wasn't part of the rules. It was real. My heart stopped. Then raced so fast I thought everyone could hear it. For a second, I melted into him. And then panic hit me. This wasn't what we agreed on. This wasn't safe. After the party, I confronted him. "What was that?" I asked, my voice trembling. He looked at me. "Come. Steady." Almost too honest. "Maybe I didn't want to pretend anymore," he said. His words hung in the air. Heavy. Dangerous. And I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to run. To escape before I lost control. But another part of me, a louder part, wanted to believe him, wanted to hold on. And never let go. From that moment, everything changed. Every look, every touch, carried double meaning. We were no longer just playing for the audience. We were playing for each other. And the line between fake and real was disappearing fast. But with every step closer, came a whisper of doubt. What if this was still just a game for him? What if I was the only one falling? What if I gave him my heart? And he dropped it without a second thought. The fear grew inside me. Like a shadow I couldn't escape. Even as my feelings deepened. Even as my heart screamed his name. I couldn't silence the question. Was I truly loved? Or just another role in his story? And that question, that haunting doubt, became the quiet crack in our bond. A crack that would one day break everything apart. The days that followed felt like living in two different worlds. On the outside, we were the perfect couple. Smiling, laughing, holding hands where everyone could see. But on the inside, I was drowning in questions. Every time he smiled at me, I wondered, was it real? Or just another part of the act? Every time he leaned close, whispering something sweet, my heart leapt, but my mind held back, because I knew one wrong step, and everything could fall apart. One evening, we sat in a quiet cafe. The air smelled of roasted coffee beans. The lights were dim, warm, almost romantic. He leaned across the table, his eyes fixed on mine. "Do you ever think about us outside of the story?" he asked softly. My breath caught. This was the question I had been too afraid to say out loud. I wanted to scream yes, but fear wrapped around my voice. I just nodded, unsure of what came next. He smiled gently. "I think about it all the time," he whispered. And in that moment, my heart believed him. But the doubt, the shadow inside me, refused to disappear. I remembered the start. How easily he agreed to play this game. How smooth his words were. How easily he convinced others. What if he was just as good at convincing me? What if this was still a performance? Only now, I was his audience of one. That night, lying awake in bed, I stared at the ceiling. My chest felt heavy. I thought about the way my family adored him. The way my friends envied me. Everyone believed I had found something special. But no one knew the truth. No one knew that I still didn't know if I was loved or fooled. The next day, we attended a small family gathering. It was loud with chatter. Kids running around. Laughter spilling through the air. He fit in so easily. My uncle asked him for advice about work. My aunt pulled me aside, whispering how lucky I was. And I just smiled, hiding the storm inside me. At dinner, he held my hand under the table, and for a moment, I almost let myself believe the fantasy completely. But then I caught him looking away. Distracted. Distant. It was only for a second. But it was enough to spark the fear again. Who was he thinking about? When he wasn't looking at me, the tiniest doubts became loud echoes in my head. And slowly, I began to pull back. Not because I wanted to, but because I was terrified. What if I fell too far? And he never intended to catch me. One evening, we had a small argument. Started over something silly, like where to eat. But quickly, it grew sharper, heavier, filled with words that hurt more than they should have. At one point, he looked at me and said, "Why do you always doubt me? Why can't you just trust what we have? I froze. 'Cause he was right. I didn't trust. Not fully. And yet, wasn't trust the very thing love was supposed to be built on? That night, we sat in silence, side by side, but miles apart. The fake smiles we once shared so easily now felt strained, broken, and for the first time, I felt the weight of what we had created. This wasn't just a harmless act anymore. This was something that could destroy us if we weren't careful. Still, the pull between us never faded, even in silence. Even in fear, I wanted him. Every part of me ached to believe, to fall, to let go, but the crack in our bond, the quiet fracture of doubt, kept widening, and as much as I tried to hold everything together, I could feel it coming. Something was about to break, and once it did, nothing would ever be the same. The beginning of the end started so quietly, not with shouting, not with anger, but with silence. A silence that grew louder each day, until it filled the spaces between us. He still showed up, still played the role, still held my hand when others looked. But when no one was around, I could feel the distance, a wall, invisible yet solid, standing between us. One night, we walked home together after a small dinner with friends. The streets were calm, the air crisp, streetlights casting long shadows. We didn't speak. Our footsteps were the only sound, echoing in rhythm, yet miles apart. Finally, I stopped walking. "Are we still pretending?" asked quietly. The words slipped out, sharp, trembling, a confession and a question all at once. He turned to me, his face unreadable in the dim light. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then with a sigh, he answered, "I don't know anymore." His honesty cut deeper than any lie could have. I felt my chest tighten, my throat close, because in those words was everything I had feared. We had blurred the lines too much, and now neither of us knew where the story ended and where the truth began. In the following days, the tension only grew. Every glance felt heavier, every word shorter. It was as if we were both waiting for the moment the illusion shattered completely. At a family dinner, my cousin teased us about being the perfect couple. I laughed on the outside, but inside, I felt something break. Perfect. If only they knew how fragile it all was. Later that evening, I caught him on the phone, his voice low, serious. When he noticed me, he hung up quickly, too quickly. And my heart sank. The doubts I had buried rushed back like a storm. Was he hiding something? Was I the only one still trying to believe this love could be real? I wanted to ask, to demand the truth, but the fear of his answer kept me silent, and that silence became my greatest enemy. The next week, he surprised me with flowers, bright, beautiful, almost too perfect. I smiled, thanked him. But deep inside, I wondered, were they a gift of love, or a distraction from something I wasn't meant to see? The cracks were widening, and I couldn't stop them. Every sweet gesture felt suspicious. Every absence felt longer, heavier, and my mind, restless and aching, filled the silence with questions I couldn't answer. One evening, as we sat together watching a movie, he reached for my hand. I wanted to hold on, to believe again, to feel safe in his touch. But for the first time, I pulled away. The hurt flashed across his face. Only for a second. But I saw it, and it shattered me, because I realized my fear was no longer just hurting me. It was hurting him too. So, I couldn't stop. The doubt had grown too deep, the cracks too wide, and all I could think was, if the truth finally came out, it would destroy us both. As I lay awake that night, staring into the darkness, I knew the moment we had been dreading was close. The moment when pretending would no longer save us. When the truth, whatever it was, would finally break through. And when it did, Nothing would ever be the same again. The truth came to me. Not in a dramatic explosion, but in a whisper I wasn't supposed to hear. It was late evening. He had left his phone on the table while stepping out for a call. I never touched his things, but something about the way he left, his hurried steps, the tension in his shoulders, made me uneasy. The phone buzzed. Once, twice, again. And before I could stop myself, I looked at the screen. The message read, "I miss you. When can I see you again?" My blood froze. My heart stopped. And in that second, the world I had built with him shattered into pieces. I wanted to believe it was a mistake. Maybe a friend. Maybe a wrong number. Maybe anything but what it looked like. But then, another message appeared. "Last night was perfect. I can't stop thinking about it." My chest tightened. My breath came short. This wasn't a mistake. This was betrayal. Raw. Undeniable. Cutting straight through me. When he walked back into the room, I forced myself to stay calm. I placed the phone back exactly where it was. My hands shaking. My lips trembling. And I smiled. I smiled as if nothing had changed. Even though everything had. That night, I lay beside him in silence. His breathing was steady, peaceful, and I stared at the ceiling, feeling my heart crack open with every second that passed. Questions raced through my head. Who was she? How long had this been happening? Was everything between us just a lie? Was I the fool who turned fake love into real love, while he was giving his heart to someone else? I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him awake and demand answers. But I couldn't, because I was too afraid of the truth. The next morning, I watched him leave for work. His smile as charming as always, and I realized that smile wasn't mine anymore. Maybe it never had been. The chaos inside me grew. Denial fought with anger. Love fought with hate. And all I could do was break in silence, while the world around me believed we were perfect. But in that chaos, a new seed was planted. A dangerous seed. A thought that whispered louder with every heartbeat. If he could hurt me like this, then he should know what it feels like to be broken too. I didn't act immediately. At first, it was just a storm of thoughts, of what ifs and should I. But slowly, the storm began to form a plan that terrified me, yet thrilled me at the same time. I told myself I wasn't cruel, I wasn't vengeful. But each time I replayed those messages in my head, each time I saw his smile knowing it was a lie, the voice inside me grew stronger. He had crossed a line, and now, so would I. But I also knew, one mistake, one slip, and it could all come crashing down. What if someone finds out it was me? I whispered to myself. The risk was real, but the temptation of revenge was stronger. And so, with trembling hands and a burning heart, I took my first step into the darkness, a step that would change everything. Forever, the first step of revenge is never the loudest. It's quiet, careful, hidden in shadows. I started by observing him. Every move, every glance at his phone, every excuse he made to step away. I memorized the patterns. How often he worked late. How his tone changed when he spoke on the phone. Softer. Almost tender. Not the way he spoke to me anymore. And with each observation, my pain sharpened into anger. Anger into determination. Determination into a plan. I told myself, I wouldn't confront him yet. No, that would give him power. I would watch, wait, and strike when the moment was perfect. But the waiting was torture. Every morning when he kissed me goodbye, I felt the sting of betrayal burn deeper. Every night when he smiled at me, I wondered if those same lips had smiled for her hours before. The duality was unbearable. To the world, we were still flawless. But behind the curtain, I was crumbling and plotting. One evening, I followed him, not far, just enough to see where he really went after work. My heart pounded, each step heavier than the last. Then, I saw it. A small cafe. Dimly lit. quiet. And there she was, younger than me, laughing too loudly, leaning too close, her hand brushing his as if she owned it. And he smiled at her. The way he used to smile at me. The sight cut me open, but it also solidified my resolve. This wasn't just a fling. This was a betrayal so deep. It demanded an answer. I walked away before they saw me. My legs felt weak, my chest hollow, but inside my mind, a voice whispered, "He thinks he's clever. He thinks he can deceive me. But he has no idea what's coming." That night, I began to sketch the outlines of revenge, not random anger, not chaos, but something precise, calculated, unforgettable. Tip 1. I needed information, details that could expose him, shatter the perfect image he had built. So I watched closer, checked his schedule, noticed when he was distracted, and slowly, carefully, I collected the pieces, texts, receipts, small clues he thought I'd never notice. Every bit of evidence added fuel to the fire inside me, and with each discovery, my fear lessened, replaced by something darker, something stronger. But in the middle of my planning came the danger, the thought that haunted me. What if someone found out what I was doing? What if my revenge backfired? What if in trying to destroy him, I ended up destroying myself too? The risks were real, the stakes higher than I had ever faced. But the alternative, swallowing this pain in silence, pretending forever, was unbearable. So I pressed on. I played my role as the loving partner in public, smiling, laughing. But in private, I was sharpening my weapon, a weapon built from truth and lies and the fire of betrayal. The night I made my first move, my hands shook. I told myself it was just the beginning. Small, harmless compared to what would come later. But even then, I knew, once I started, there would be no turning back. So, I sent the first ripple into his perfect little world. A ripple that he wouldn't notice right away, but one that would grow, spread, and eventually drown him completely. The weeks after my first move were tense, electric, dangerous. Every morning I woke with a knot in my stomach, wondering if the ripple had reached him yet. At first, nothing obvious changed, but small fissures began to appear. A colleague who once greeted him warmly now gave curt nods. A friend who used to share jokes with him suddenly seemed distant. The perfect life he had shown to the world was cracking at the edges. I watched him closely, from across rooms, in meetings, at dinners, pretending normalcy while my pulse raced. He walked differently now. Shoulders tighter, smiles forced, eyes guarded. Once he was careless. Now he double-checked his surroundings before answering a call. I had made him look twice at every phone notification. Made him feel the uneasy shadow of suspicion I had lived under for weeks. The thrill of control surprised me and scared me. I felt power, but it came with a price. Sleepless nights and a gnawing fear. What if someone finds out it was me? I whispered into the darkness more times than I can count. That question followed me into showers, into the grocery store, into the quiet of early mornings. If it came out that I had orchestrated his fall, would people see me as brave or cruel? Would they call me a liar, a manipulator, a villain wearing a broken heart? I started covering my tracks. Small things at first. Clearing browser history, making sure photos I took of his receipts were private. I avoided telling my closest friend the full truth. Only hints to explain my distance. Secrecy became my second skin. Heavy and familiar. Every move I made now required two thoughts. One for the plan, one to hide the planner. At the same time, the bait I'd left began to work in unexpected ways. Rumors sprouted like weeds. Quiet comments in group chats. A whisper at a small party. Someone forwarded a screenshot I had never intended to spread so widely, and watched it mutate into gossip. He called me that night. Voice raw, asking who had sent it. Who had done this to him? I listened to him plead with phone pressed to his ear, and I felt a cold satisfaction I could not fully explain. But then, consequences arrived I didn't expect. His sister called our mutual friends. Confusion, hurt, questions. Names tossed around like fragile things. People texted me asking if it was true. Their messages precise with curiosity and cruelty. I replied with careful calm. Nothing to reveal my role. But each false smile I texted felt like a lie carved into me. He confronted me once, quietly, in the hallway after a small gathering. You're smiling too much, he muttered. Who are you now? My throat tightened. The rehearsed lines stuck in my mouth. I said nothing that night, because silence was my armor. He stormed out soon after, slamming the door to a life we'd pretended to share. Those moments of victory came at a cost I hadn't measured. Friends taking sides. Parents asking questions I avoided. Invitations that stopped arriving. I had expected allies to admire my courage. Instead, quiet judgments settled like dust. My mother asked if I was okay, worried for me in ways I could not answer without confessing everything. How do you tell someone you engineered another person's ruin? Even if that person hurt you. The seed of revenge had grown into a tree with deep roots. Its branches shook with every whisper. I had proof stacked like small confessionals on my phone. Messages, photos, little humiliations that would make anyone flinch. I found myself both proud and horrified by the archive I kept. Evidence of his deception and my own descent into something sharp and survival-driven. One evening, at a small birthday party for a mutual friend, the first real public fallout happened. He arrived late, face pale and tight. Whispers circled like birds. Someone in the corner showed a screenshot. The group's laughter stopped as eyes moved toward him. He swallowed hard, tried to joke. His voice cracked under the weight of eyes that suddenly saw him differently. I sat frozen, my hands trembling on the edge of my glass, watching the man who had once been my anchor unravel in real time. A woman next to me whispered, "I thought he was so kind." Her words were a knife and a bomb at the same time. Kindness had been his mask, and now the mask was all anyone could see. I felt a rotten kind of victory, and then a sharp guilt that left me hollow. That night, when the apartment was quiet and the world outside dimmed, he showed up at my door. Rain plastered his hair to his forehead, eyes rimmed with sleeplessness. "You did this," he said plainly. No theatrics, only raw exhaustion. I wanted to deny it, to stab at the web I had woven and tear it apart. Instead, I watched him in silence, feeling the truth of my actions reflected back at me. He begged once more. Not for forgiveness exactly, but for the chance to explain himself. "Please," he said, voice small. "I never meant for anyone to get hurt like this." I wanted to tell him he hadn't just hurt me. He taught me a new language of pain. And in that language, I had learned the grammar of revenge. But I stayed quiet, because words felt cheap next to what I had set in motion. In the weeks that followed, the ripples I created swelled outward. Colleagues who admired his career began to ask questions to HR. Whispers became formal inquiries in office corridors. Friends who once invited us to dinner now chose sides and made new seating plans where his chair remained empty. Even small corners of our town knew some version of the story by the time the weekend arrived. I watched how quickly a life could be rearranged. One rumor at a time. One screenshot at a time. He lost clients, small trust eroded into big consequences. For some people, justice. For others, spectacle. And for me, a complicated relief smeared with a shame I could not wash away. There were nights when I told myself I would stop, fold the plan into silence, Walk away and never look back. But the thought of returning to the woman who once believed blindly felt impossible now. I had crossed a line, both outward and inward, and even if I wanted to retreat, the plan had become part of me, so I braced for what came next. For the louder consequences that would not be contained by whispers. I checked my messages before sleep. Triple-checked that no trace would lead back to me. The fear stayed with me, a shadow on my shoulder whispering consequences. But the drive to see it through pushed the fear to the edge. This was no longer just about exposing him. It was about protecting myself from ever being naive again. It was about making sure the world understood I would not stand silent while being hurt. But the truth remained. Every wound I inflicted also left a scar on me, and as the ripples spread outwards, I wondered if I had traded the worst pain for a different, subtler one. A loneliness born from the truth I had chosen to reveal. The night of my first move of revenge finally came. My hands were trembling as I held the evidence I had collected. Screenshots, messages, whispers of secrets he thought no one would ever know. I had pieced them together slowly, carefully, every detail lined up like the edges of a puzzle. And now, I was ready to place the final piece. I knew the risk was enormous. If anyone discovered it was me behind this plan, everything would fall apart. My reputation, my job, even the fragile trust of those around me. It could all shatter in an instant. But the hunger for justice inside me was louder than fear. I set the stage quietly. An anonymous email account, a carefully timed delivery. One click was all it would take to expose him. I hovered over the send button, my chest rising and falling as though I had run a marathon. This was it, no turning back. When I pressed send, it felt like releasing years of anger in one breath, but almost instantly, a wave of panic followed. What had I done? What if the wrong person saw it? What if it backfired on me? The next day at work, the air felt heavy. Whispers echoed in the corridors. Eyes darted toward him, then quickly away. I knew people had seen it. The cracks were beginning to spread. And he, the man who had betrayed me, he wore a mask of calm, but I could see the sweat on his forehead. Later that afternoon, I caught him glancing my way. His stare lingered just a little too long, as though he was searching my face for answers. Did he know it was me? Did he suspect? My heart pounded like a drum, and yet, I forced myself to stay still. Unreadable. That night, alone in my room, I replayed everything in my head. The revenge had begun. The first blow had landed. But instead of relief, I felt an ache deep inside. Because revenge is not clean. It doesn't simply wash away the pain. It spreads it, stains it, and sometimes, it clings to you even tighter. I told myself this was only the beginning. He had taken so much from me. And one email was not enough to balance the scales. If he thought he could hide behind charm and lies, I would show him how fragile his mask truly was. Piece by piece, I would dismantle his world, until he felt exactly what I had felt. The danger was real, and I knew every step forward risked exposing me. But something inside had already shifted. Once you cross the line into revenge, there is no easy way back. And I had already taken that step. The day of truth arrived like a held breath. I woke early, heart loud in my ears, and the evidence feeling heavy in my bag. Every step to the cafe felt like walking toward a verdict. I had rehearsed this in my head 1,000 times. Each detail measured. Each second counted. He arrived looking ordinary, like a man who still believed his secrets were safe. He sat down, ordered coffee, smiled at the barista like nothing was wrong. I watched him pretend normalcy with a calm that made my skin crawl. This was the man who had made my nights sleepless. The man who had taught me how to hide a storm behind a smile. I sat across from him, voice steady though my hands trembled slightly. "Do you remember our rules?" I asked softly. He laughed. A short, hollow sound. How could I forget, he said. My eyes met his. And I pushed a single envelope across the table. Plain. Unmarked. Heavy with truth. He glanced at it like it was something foreign. Then looked at me with curious amusement. Open it, I said. Simple. Cold. He tore the flap. Unfolded the pages. And his face changed in a way I had dreamed of and feared. Confusion first. Then shock. Then the slow burn of panic. I watched as each line and screenshot mapped him to the betrayal he had tried so hard to hide. What is this? He whispered. Voice small. Fragile. Not the man I once loved. Not the man who had made me laugh until it hurt. You know exactly what it is, I replied. My voice low. Edged with the months of pain that led me here. He swallowed. His fingers trembled as he held the photos. The messages. The receipts. Proof smiling back at him like a mirror of his lies. Around US. The cafe hummed with life. But time folded in on itself for US. A private chamber of consequence. He tried to laugh it off. To flip the script. This is a mistake. He began. Weak and pleading. I cut him off with a single shake of my head. No excuses left, I said. You chose this path. His eyes darted to the door. To the windows. To every face that might be watching. Panic made him clumsy. He dropped a paper. It fluttered like a wounded bird to the floor. For a moment, I almost felt sorry. Then the memory of his betrayal rushed back like a wave. And pity died in my throat. He stood abruptly. Chair scraping loudly. Coffee spilling. The clatter pulled a few heads toward our table. You can't do this here, he hissed. Anger flaring like a small, useless flame. I can, I said. Very quietly. Because I wanted the truth in the light. He lunged toward the table. Grabbed at the papers. Give them back, he demanded. Voice raw with panic. She, the woman from the messages, was gone now. Vanished into the city or shame or both. And he had nothing to hold on to but me and the ruin I had placed before him. People watched now openly. Phones lifting. Whispers forming like vultures circling meat. He realized the world was watching his unmasking. And the color drained from his face. I felt a cold satisfaction. Not joy. A cool, precise relief that justice was no longer private. You ruined me, he said, voice thin and accusing. No, I answered, calm and final. You ruined us. He choked on a word that might have been a lie or a plea. Why would you do this, he managed. Because you taught me the language of deceit, I said. And I learned how to speak it back. His hands dropped to his knees. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. Smaller than the man who had made me believe in US. For a second, the memory of his kindness flickered in me. And I almost regretted the weight of the envelope. Then I remembered the nights I cried into pillows. The mornings I pretended to be okay. And remorse felt selfish. He begged then. Please. We can fix this. I can explain. He stammered. I stood slowly. The world narrowing to the raw lines of his face and the quiet steadiness of my own breath. No, I said plainly. There is nothing left to fix. He reached for me then. As if touch could stitch the world back together. Please. Don't leave me like this, he pleaded. Voice breaking. Real now. Raw and exposed. I stepped back. The tip of his fingers brushed my sleeve. A ghost of what we once had. Not everything can be rebuilt, I told him. Some things are meant to teach, not to last. His shoulders slumped. Defeat settling over him like a coat too big for his frame. The cafe filled with murmurs and the click of camera phones. People already inventing stories to fill the gaps truth had left open. He attempted one more time to twist the narrative. "You don't know his whole story. You don't see the reasons," he said, trying to place blame outside himself. I stared at him. Read the plea and the cowardice wrapped together. And I answered softly. "Reasons don't erase choices." A barista cleared the tray near us awkwardly. An older woman in the corner looked at me with sympathy. A teenager filmed the scene with an intent I hated. Everything felt public. Raw. Final. He sank to his chair slowly. Face in his hands. The man who had been my refuge now unmade by his own hands and mine together. I walked out into the light without looking back. The autumn air cool against my face. Lungs filling with freer breaths, though my chest ached with the cost of truth. As I left, I heard snippets of conversation trailing behind me. "Did you see that? What a scandal. I can't believe he." They stitched the beginning of a new story around him and me. One that would be told in fragments for days. Weeks. Maybe forever. The final act here had been exposure. Vivid. Public. Undeniable. But as the adrenaline faded, a quiet truth settled in my bones. Exposure does not always equal healing. I had forced him to face what he had done. I had dragged the lie into the light. Now, the aftermath awaited. A slow tide of consequences washing over both of us. And as I walked away into the crowd, the city swallowing me like a current, I whispered into my own chest. This is what truth looks like when you let it loose. The climax had broken the silence. But it had not answered whether I would be free or hollow. Only time would tell. The days after the cafe were strange. His world was collapsing. But mine didn't feel whole either. The whispers followed me everywhere. Co-workers glanced longer than they should. Friends asked questions I couldn't fully answer. Revenge is never neat. It drags shadows with it. Then came the night he showed up at my door, unannounced. Desperate. Hollow-eyed like a man drowning. I opened the door just enough to see his face. Pale. Sunken. Nothing like the arrogant calm he once wore. "Please. Just listen," he begged. His voice cracked. I said nothing. Only stared. "Everything's falling apart," he continued. "Work. Family. Friends. They've all seen it." "That was the point," I said coldly. He flinched at my tone, his hand tightening on the doorframe. "You don't understand. They think I'm a monster." "You made yourself one," I replied, words sharp as glass. He shook his head. "You ruined me." "No," I said again. "Steady. Final. You ruined yourself." There was silence, broken only by his shallow breathing. Then, his eyes hardened, anger flickering through the cracks of his despair. "You think you've won," he whispered. "But this isn't over." My chest tightened. Because in his voice, I heard not defeat, but a threat. "What are you planning?" he asked, my voice sharper now. He leaned closer, a bitter smile tugging at his lips. "You're not as untouchable as you think," he said. I felt the words like a stone dropped in water, ripples of unease spreading inside me. For a moment, doubt clawed at me. Had I gone too far? Had I cornered him so completely that he'd lash out dangerously? "Leave," I told him, my voice low, unshaken on the surface, though inside my heart pounded. He didn't move. "Leave," I repeated, louder. Finally, he stepped back, his eyes burning with a promise I didn't want to hear. "This isn't the end," he said softly, then turned and disappeared into the night. I closed the door quickly, leaning against it as though to hold back the weight of his shadow. The revenge had begun with exposure. But now, the danger was turning back toward me. The following days were a blur. Rumors spread faster than wildfire. His career shattered. His circle dissolved. But alongside it, I felt eyes turning toward me too. Some looked at me as if I was brave, others as if I was cruel, and the question grew louder in my mind. Had I unmasked him? Or had I unmasked myself too? Then came the confrontation I couldn't avoid. We crossed paths in the office corridor. His face gaunt, his suit hanging looser. He stopped in front of me. His voice low enough for only me to hear. "You wanted to break me," he said. "Yes," I answered simply. "Well, congratulations." He muttered, "But don't forget, broken things have sharp edges." His words cut deep, not because they were true, but because they carried the threat of what he might do next. And yet, I didn't flinch. "Stay away from me," I told him. He smirked faintly. "Or what? You'll expose more." For a moment, silence stretched between us. Two soldiers in a war of secrets. Then I leaned closer. Whispered just loud enough. "No. I'll destroy what little you have left." The look in his eyes was half fear, half rage. And in that instant, I knew the climax of our story had not ended at the cafe. It was still building. Towards something heavier. Something final. That night, I sat in the dark, the glow of my phone screen lighting the evidence I still had left. I hadn't used everything. Not yet. The thought pressed into me. Sharp and relentless. If he tried to fight back, if he tried to drag me down, I would strike again. Harder. Without hesitation. The line between love and hate, between justice and cruelty, had blurred completely now. What had started as revenge was becoming survival. I whispered to myself in the silence of my room, "This ends with one of us destroyed." And I knew. I was ready for that ending. The final night arrived like a cold glass of water. I felt its weight the moment the sun dipped and the city lights blinked awake. Everything I had built, everything I had prepared came down to this one evening. He called me earlier, voice low and careful. "Meet me at the rooftop," he said. "We need to finish this." My heart jumped. Then steadied. I agreed. Because endings must be faced, not hidden from. The elevator ride up felt endless. Each floor a drumbeat in my chest. When I stepped onto the rooftop, the wind hit like truth. Sharp and honest. He was already there. Hands shoved deep into his pockets. Silhouette against the city glow. "Why here?" I asked, voice steady though my legs trembled. He laughed once, hollow. "Because there's nowhere to run here. No audience to hide behind." I looked at him. At the man made small by his choices. He studied me as if looking for the version of me that would forgive. "You did this," he said finally. Quiet and hard. "You destroyed my life." "Yes," I answered, each syllable steady and even. "I destroyed the life you built on lies." His jaw flexed. Anger and something rawer flickered in his eyes. "You have no idea what I'll do now," he said, tone low, a dangerous promise. I stepped closer. The wind tangled my hair across my face. "Try me," I said simply. "But remember, you started this." He laughed then. A small sound that did not reach his eyes. The moon looked down like a witness. Cold and impartial. "You think you're free?" he asked. "You think exposing me makes you whole?" "No," I said honestly. "It doesn't make me whole. But it makes me honest." His silence lasted long enough for the city to inhale. Then he spat the words like a blade. "You broke me, and now I'll break you in return." Fear flickered through me. Sharp and immediate. But it did not rule me. "Do it," I said, voice soft but unyielding. "But if you try to hurt me, remember how small the world is now." His face changed then. Not with rage, but with something like pain. Was I never enough? He asked, voice cracking. Did you ever love me at all? The question stabbed me. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because it asked for honesty he had denied me for months. You were enough until you weren't, I said quietly. You chose her. You chose lies. He fell back onto the low parapet, hands covering his face. The city noise humming below us like a distant sea. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The rooftop holding our breaths for us. Then he looked up, eyes wet, anger burned into resignation. If I lose everything, will you feel better? He whispered. I sat beside him on the cold concrete, the world feeling both enormous and painfully small. No, I admitted, truth soft on my tongue. I don't want you destroyed. I wanted honesty. A choked laugh escaped him. Honesty, he repeated. You made everyone see me as a monster. You made them see me as I am, I corrected, gentler than I felt. And that matters. He stared at his hands, fingers trembling. I had a life, clients, respect, people who counted on me. He muttered. You took it away. And you took my trust, I said, voice small but firm. That was the cost. Silence returned. Deeper now, filled with all the things we could not fix. The wind moved around us, a quiet emissary of consequence. I realized then the truth behind the threat he had made. That losing him would cost me too. But in a different currency. Peace traded for rage. Calm for vindication. He stood slowly. The movement tired and precise. Do you want the last word? He asked, bitter humor undercutting the pain. No, I said at once. I want an end. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. The same shape, the same weight as the one I had once offered him. My breath hitched. Reflex pulling at the memory of paper and revelation. He held it out to me like an offering or a dare. I could expose you, he said. You think you're the only one with secrets. My hands clenched. A sudden flare of danger pulsed through my veins. But when I took the envelope in trembling fingers, I felt nothing but tiredness. And something like relief. I opened it slowly, the wind making the paper flutter. Inside, only an old photo and a short note. Nothing scandalous. Nothing that would ruin me. His eyes searched mine. That's it, he said hollowly. All I had. I felt both pity and a strange exhaustion at the revelation. All the grand threat reduced to an ordinary piece of paper. We sat there a long time. Two people stripped of illusion and armor. He apologized finally. Not with the loud words of drama, but quietly, raw and human. I'm sorry, he said simply. I'm so sorry. The apology hung in the air like glass. Beautiful but easily broken. I wanted to believe him. To fold into forgiveness and make the ache dissolve. But some wounds do not mend with words. I heard you, I told him. I received your apology. But apologies are not bridges. They are only beginnings, and sometimes beginnings come too late. He nodded once. Slow. Understanding perhaps dawning on him. Or maybe resignation. We stood together for a moment, then slowly descended the stairwell as dawn touched the edge of the skyline. In the light of day, the rooftop's finality softened into a new kind of ordinary. The public exposure, the threats, the nights of fear. All reached a conclusion not with spectacle but with a small, human reconciliation that cost nothing and gave even less. As I walked away from him for the last time, I felt an odd compound of victory and loss. I had won the truth, yes. I had dragged the lie into daylight and unmade the story he had told the world. But victory did not feel like joy. It felt like a slow settling of sediment after a storm. Heavy and necessary but not clean. I whispered to myself on the empty street. A vow and a warning wrapped together. Never again, I breathed. No more pretending. No more silence. He watched me go for a long moment, then turned away, folding himself back into the small, broken life he had left to me and others. The final blow had landed. And the climax closed not with fireworks but with a quiet that carried everything we had become. Only later would I learn what peace truly meant. And whether the cost of the truth was worth the hollow it left behind. Morning came slow, like a wound trying to close but not quite healing. The city hummed back to life outside my window, cars, voices, laughter. All moving forward as if nothing had happened. But for me, everything had changed. I sat at my desk, staring at the blank page of my journal. The pen felt heavier than usual, as though the weight of the last few weeks had lodged itself in my fingers. I wrote only 3 words. It is over. Yet even as I wrote them, I wasn't sure they were true. Was it really over? Or had I only closed one chapter, while the ache of betrayal lingered like smoke after fire? Thought about him. His face on the rooftop, tired and beaten down by the truths he could no longer outrun. His apology, small, fragile, almost childlike, echoed in my chest. I had wanted him destroyed. But in the end, I realized destruction was never the goal. I wanted him to see me. I wanted him to understand what he had taken when he chose lies over love. And he did see me, at least for a moment. But that recognition did not come with peace. It came with emptiness, like staring into a mirror and finding no reflection. Days passed. People still whispered about him, about the scandal, about the fallout. Some defended him, others condemned him. My name was whispered too, though in softer tones. I had become the woman who uncovered the truth. The one who had turned the story upside down. Some admired me. Others judged me for not keeping quiet. At night, when silence wrapped the city, I asked myself questions I couldn't answer. Did I do the right thing? Was it worth the sleepless nights, the fear, the constant worry of what if he strikes back? Did revenge really heal anything? The truth was simpler and harder. Revenge did not heal. It exposed. It forced light into dark places, but it did not mend the wounds left behind. I still missed him in ways I didn't want to admit. Not the man he became, not the liar, but the man he was before, the one who made me laugh when I didn't want to, the one who held my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. Grief, I realized, was complicated. It wasn't just for the person lost, but for the person who never truly existed. Weeks turned into months. He vanished from the places we once haunted together. The rooftop moment became a memory that felt both sharp and blurred, like a photograph left too long in the sun. I moved on with routines, work, friends, the quiet rhythm of daily life. But inside, the scar remained. One evening, I walked along the river where we once had our first fake date, the one that was supposed to be a joke. The lights of the city shimmered on the water. I remembered how we laughed that night, how easy it all felt. It was supposed to be pretend, but somewhere between the smiles and stolen glances, it became real. Real love, real trust, real pain. I sat on a bench, watching couples walk by hand in hand, and felt both envy and release. I envied their innocence, their unbroken trust. But I also felt free. Because I had faced betrayal head-on, and though it scarred me, it did not kill me. Peace, I learned, is not the absence of pain. It is the ability to live with it, to carry it without letting it consume you. And that's what I was learning, slowly, imperfectly. Sometimes I still dream of him. In those dreams, he is kind again, gentle again, the man I thought I loved. But I wake, and reality waits with open arms, reminding me that dreams are only illusions. And illusions had already cost me too much. One day I saw him from afar. He looked thinner, older, weighed down by choices that could not be undone. He didn't see me. Or maybe he pretended not to. I stood there, frozen, waiting for anger to rise again. But it didn't. Instead, I felt a strange sadness, like watching someone you once knew become a stranger. We were ghosts to each other now. That night, I wrote in my journal again. This time the words came easier. Revenge is not victory. It is survival. And survival is enough. I closed the book and exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. The scars would remain. But scars are proof of healing, not just wounds. And as I touched the pages, I realized something important. I was still here. Still breathing. Still able to love again someday. And maybe that was the real ending. Not the rooftop, not the exposure, not the apology, but the quiet strength I had built in the aftermath. The story didn't end with him. It ended with me. And in that truth, I finally found something close to peace. If this story touched you, take a moment to reflect on the emotions it stirred. Because every tale of love, betrayal, and healing carries a piece of our shared humanity. Your thoughts and feelings matter, so if you'd like, share them in the comments below, and let's build a space where stories connect us. If you enjoy emotional English stories like this, you're welcome to subscribe and stay with us on this journey. No rush, no pressure, just heartfelt storytelling together.